Welcome, everybody. My name is Mark O'Toole. I'm part of Eric Moore & Associates PR practice. Thanks for joining us today. Our webinar today is titled Building Trust Through Listening, Commitment, and Transparency, and it's all about corporate social responsibility. Our presenters today are my public relations colleagues, Brad Rye, who leads our Rochester office, and Chuck Beeler, who leads PR in our Syracuse office. Our firm is a digitally integrated, independent marketing and public relations agency with about 200 professionals in 5 states across 9 offices. We're in Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, Albany, and New York City. And we're also in Cincinnati, Charlotte, Boston, and Atlanta. And we work for clients around the country and around the globe. Please follow us on Twitter. The handle is @MowerAgency. Feel free to comment on this webinar on social too, if you feel like it. Brad and Chuck will take questions at the end of the presentation. Please use the Q&A module. It's on the left-hand side of your screen, and you can put your questions there. And now we'll get started. Take it away, Brad and Chuck.
Well, thank you, Mark. This is Chuck Beeler. I thought a great way to start this conversation would be to review a 30-second commercial I saw from Coca-Cola while I was watching the Syracuse-Michigan State game on Sunday. Sorry, any MSU fans out there, including my colleague Brad. Seriously, I've seen this multiple times during March Madness, and it's a great spot. And I'm going to play it, and then we'll talk about it a little bit.
We at the Coca-Cola Company believe the health of our water sources is essential to the health of our communities, which is why we're helping to replenish the mighty Rio Grande, as well as over 30 watersheds across the country. We're also leading water projects in more than 100 communities. And for every drop we use, we're working to give one back, because our products rely on the same thing as we all do: clean water. And we care about it like our business depends on it.
Great. So the big question is, why would a brand like Coca-Cola spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a commercial that there was one small little product reference, but on a whole, this had nothing to do with selling products? It is all about why we're here today, to talk about corporate social responsibility and what is the message. For Coca-Cola, the message is we are a responsible company. And here's what we're doing to support that commitment. Interestingly, the spot is called Why We Care About Water. And I would tell you that the Coca-Cola executives who created this strategy would answer that with saying, because our customers expect us to care about water, and we need to show them what they're doing. Constituent expectation drives CSR, and that's what we're talking about today. Corporate social responsibility from a definition standpoint has a lot of different terms. Is it about ethics? Is it about quality, fairness in the workplace? It's many different things. One of the better definitions I have seen is from the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. And they write, corporate social responsibility is the continuing commitment by business to behave ethically and contribute to economic development while improving the quality of life of the workforce and their families, as well as the local community and the society at large. When you break that down into 4 key segments, it's about ethics, economic development, workforce, and community.
So why commit to a responsibility platform? Well, the simple answer is it's become table stakes. In this day and age, you're noted by your absence. People expect that brands are doing this. And you can see some statistics on the slides that bear that out. Interestingly, statistics show that responsible companies perform better. In a recent letter to business leaders, the founder and CEO of investment firm BlackRock wrote, "To prosper over time, every company must not only deliver financial performance, but also show how it makes a positive contribution to society." Well, here's where the rubber really hits the road. Customers prefer responsible brands. Customer expectations are that the companies that they buy from are demonstrably responsible. Responsible behavior really drives customer preference. And there is a strong linkage between corporate social responsibility and employees. This is an evolution in CSR that's really taken off over the last decade or so. When asked the most important responsible business practice, Americans felt being a good employer was the top priority. 35% of respondents said that in a survey from the Cone 2017 CSR report. Shows that consumers want to do business with companies that first and foremost do good for their own people. A study by NYU and Imperative found that purpose-oriented employees tend to remain with employers 20% longer than those at other companies and are about 47% more likely to be more engaged promoters of the companies that they work for. There's a recent story from CNBC that really reinforced this and pointed out that morale amongst current employees increases when companies drive philanthropic efforts, thereby increasing employee retention and saving businesses thousands of dollars in hiring costs. Numerous studies confirm that employees who have a sense of purpose at work are higher performers, more productive, and are much more willing to stay with the company. So clearly some real business performance values are driven by corporate social responsibility.
What are the defining characteristics of any given CSR campaign? What's interesting is every company is different. So there are no boilerplate solutions to do this, do that, do this. It really is a customizable experience. And when we talk to clients, it really falls into three areas relative to what drives a strategy. And it starts with the brand or the company itself. And Brad will talk later about, how mission, vision, values has a lot to do with defining, what is the purpose of a company. And then the stakeholders have a large say in this because, in large part, corporate social responsibility is about shared values and meeting the expectations of your stakeholders. So you've got to go out and talk to customers, vendors, distribution partners, employees. What are their expectations of your brand? And the third piece we look at when defining a corporate social responsibility strategy is the marketplace. This again drives expectations in a different way in that looking at what other brands are doing in your space, you can learn from what they're doing, but also there is an expected level of performance within any given category. One of the brands, interestingly, Forbes last year did a poll with RepTrack, and the number one most socially responsible brand in 2017 was Lego. And that's after reviewing 170,000 companies in 15 countries. What I find fascinating about Lego's campaign is its simplicity. Now, I say it's simple, but the depth and breadth of the programming is just mind-blowing. It's kind of what you'd expect from a $35 billion company. But when you break it down to its elements, the three key pillars, if you will, of their, as they call it, their responsibility story is innovation for children, environmental leadership, and being a caring and ethical and transparent organization. Now, the third pillar there is kind of a catch-all for employees, community, and ethics. But I can tell you that each of those buckets is backfilled, if you will, with billions of dollars worth of programs. And you can look at that in one respect and go, well, I'm not Lego. How can I relate to that? That's the best thing about corporate social responsibility and looking what other peer organizations are doing. CSR is scalable from a scope and an execution level standpoint. But when you break it down to strategy, there's a lot brands can learn from other brands. And the types of things that Lego is doing is really interesting. But these polls are, I tell you, it's fascinating. I saw another poll the other day from Smart Recruiters, and they had put together their ranking of the top 20 CSR brands in America, and not surprisingly, Ben & Jerry's was number one. You give away 7.5% of your pre-tax profits for 40 years to charity, and you become the number one brand in CSR. But number two was Bosch, over Starbucks, IBM, IKEA, Microsoft. And you look at Bosch, what's Bosch doing? And interestingly, I looked into it, and it was a lot of science and technology and converting old cars into new components and reducing carbon footprints. And you know what that's all about? Brad talked about it earlier with the employee piece. You don't think for a minute that Bosch is doing that to recruit young engineers?
Absolutely.
That's the type of workplace that young engineers want to work in. And they're using CSR as a means to fulfill that. And you don't have to be a big consumer brand like Lego to have a real effective approach to CSR. I found this little company called, they're not a little company, but this company called Alliance Data. They're in the data technology business, loyalty marketing. And they have a very simple, straightforward approach, data for good. But what I really liked about their approach here was how they actually use their own technology and their products as an integral element of their social responsibility platform. And they talk about how their products and technology are delivering good. And in using one example, they do work with Amber Alert. And another thing I like about what they do is the way they report their results. You go on their website, you see an annual report, you see a letter from the president, and you also see quantifiable results. Here's what we're donating to the communities in which we live. One key footnote there is reporting isn't bragging. Another key component of CSR is storytelling. Here's two brands, Paychex and DS Water, whose website, water.com, now is home to the CSR campaign called Every Drop Counts. For each of these brands, we help them create a narrative that fits the brand personality and connects their program with their different constituents. In each of these cases, that brand feel and fit and narrative was informed through constituent conversations. And for a minute here, now we're going to delve into, I'd like to spend some time talking about kind of what the strategic construct of a CSR effort is in the context of how we work with our clients under the theme we talked about earlier of listening, commitment, and transparency. When we talk about listening with our clients, I jumped ahead a couple slides there, sorry. This just keeps jumping ahead here. All right. Okay. When we talk about listening with our clients, our approach we approach it, every company or brand wants to be and is a good corporate citizen. Our job is to help them make sure that their program is aligned with their business and the expectation of their constituents, and that's not a static campaign. And we ordinarily, when we work with a client, we listen in three different areas. Area one is competitive analysis, looking at their peers. What are the types of programs they're doing? How do they tell their story? Talking to their customers. This is a scalable insight process that can include phone calls, online surveys, interviews, focus groups. But the key takeaway here is defining the wants and needs of your customers. And I'll talk in a minute about in complex organizations when you've got commercial and consumer customers. And the third piece is your stakeholders, your employees, your sales channel, your operations, your vendors, your distributors. These are the people with the feet on the street. We need to assess their expectations, measure their perceptions, and look where they may even uncover some opportunities. The outlook of customers can be completely different from a commercial to consumer standpoint. This was a little case I extracted from a client we worked with recently, where we did intercepts with their consumer customers and their commercial customers. And as you can see, the expectations of the consumer, number one is environmental. Ethical behavior was number 4. When you go to the commercial side, ethical practices was number 1. Innovation and government policy were 2 and 3. I'm not going to get into the weeds of each of these types of things, but the net takeaway here is your overarching strategy needs to be informed by all of your different audiences.
Your constituents expect your values to align with theirs, so therefore your CSR strategy must be based on and committed to that alignment. So a company's corporate social responsibility strategy really needs to align with its mission, vision, and values and reflect its brand promise. So we'll take a moment to talk about mission, vision, and values. We like to think that a company's mission represents a company's purpose. It serves to anchor the business. So in that regard, a mission statement must be one that employees and other stakeholders believe in. The vision statement represents a look into the future state of the business to understand where the company is going. A vision statement should inspire. And the values are really the heart and soul of a company that we want employees to always remember so they can live by them each and every day. Strong mission, vision, and value statements will inspire confidence, loyalty, excitement, and a sense of purpose among employees, While for customers and external audiences, understanding and agreeing with the mission, vision, and values can help them make favorable decisions about doing business with your company. So you can see there's close alignment with corporate social responsibility and mission, vision, and values of a company. We showed you the Paychex corporate responsibility microsite a few minutes ago. Ethics is a foundational pillar of Paychex's CSR program because it's a foundational pillar of the company. You can see ethics reflected in the values shown here.
Well, it should surprise none of you, or maybe it will, that the biggest mistake most companies make in the context of corporate social responsibility, believe it or not talking about it. Some clients will say, we don't want to brag. And we're not suggesting that corporate social responsibility communications is bragging. But what it really is reporting. And you need to communicate with your constituents. We look at corporate social responsibility as a contract between a company and a brand and their constituents. You have a responsibility to report back on what you're doing. This isn't bragging. It's delivering on a promise. And there's a lot of different ways you can deliver, if you will, on that promise. And the most obvious way that we see every day is on a company's website. That remains the first and best place to present one's CSR program. But beyond the website, there's other ways to report. You can see here on the screen, Hershey, Target, AMX. They spend a lot of time and money with their CSR campaigns. And at the end of every year, they publish a report to report back to their constituents, this is what we're doing. You'll often also see companies include corporate social responsibility in their annual report. The most cost-effective way to maintain an ongoing level of communications about your CSR is social media, whether it be Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. These are highly effective and these are efficient ways for brands to talk to their constituents about their CSR activities. Now, I called out Cisco here. I found this was fascinating. Cisco actually created a Facebook page for their CSR. They've got over 110,000 followers on their CSR page. Now, they're a global company with hundreds of thousands of customers and vendors and distributors. And what a smart way to communicate to your internal constituents about what you're doing in CSR than creating a Facebook page for it. But beneath this, again, like I used the example with Lego, there's a lot we can all learn, and that CSR reporting and communicating is very scalable. The lessons I see here from Cisco, what I like is they don't just report, they tell stories. And they use social to tell those stories. And in this case here, you might not be able to see it, but this is a group of people in India who are doing, it's one of their sustainable green teams. And at the end of the little sentence there, it says, click here to learn more about this story. And they publish these stories every day. Storytelling is the absolute best way to report results. And, you know, you can look at weekly, monthly, quarterly ways to tell your CSR story to your constituents on your Facebook page. That would be it's a great way to. Now, no matter what you use, whether it be an annual report, a website, a social media page, there's some tenets, if you will, to follow in communicating your CSR campaign. And the four we like to share with clients are authenticity. This isn't a brochure. In describing your corporate social responsibility initiatives, you need to show emotion. You need to connect with your constituents. You need to have consistency in your outreach. You need to communicate often. Be multi-channel. There's so many different ways to do this. Having a website is great, but how are you using your social media pages? How visual are you being? Are you using video? Video is a great way to talk about corporate social responsibility. And I don't mean in the context of a multi-million-dollar Coca-Cola 30-second ad. But I've seen companies create their own videos about what they're doing and post them on their Facebook page. And that's just as effective. And lastly, communicate results. You know, I talked about storytelling, but you need to in addition to storytelling, show me the results. If you did a campaign to raise money, how much money did you raise? If you committed volunteers to do community cleanup, how many hours did you donate? These are deliverable results that you can show your constituents. Now, the one last thing I want to talk about with CSR, and we deal with clients, and there's a large continuum of what clients are doing. Some have just started a CSR campaign. Some are deeply rooted in a long-standing commitment to CSR. Others are somewhere in between. And likewise, the manner in which brands communicate their CSR is different. No matter where you are on that continuum, you need to be able to manage change. CSR is not a static exercise. Your business changes, what your constituents care about, and what they expect of you changes. You start with a CSR strategy that's aligned with your business and your constituents, but that vision needs to be informed by ongoing input. I look at it as three things. You've got to review, reflect, and potentially reinvigorate what it is you're doing. Because this is another Cone poll, and this one here talks about, they ask consumers, what are the most important things you want from a company, from a responsible practices standpoint. Interestingly, being a good employer was number one. I found this fascinating. And the subtext here for me is, you look at being a good employer intuitively in the context of HR. And that's not a wrong place for it to be. But the story here to me is that CSR and HR aren't mutually exclusive. You need to report within the context of CSR how you treat your employees as much as you do in HR. And then some of the other things you'd expect, it's the environment. The number three, the 89%, said creating products and services or programs that ensure the well-being of me and my family. Connecting your products to your corporate social responsibility. That's one of the things I liked about the earlier Alliance Data example. And again, on that continuum, we deal with a lot of different clients and a lot of different businesses. No matter where they are on that continuum, these are the things you need to look at on the formative stages early on, midterm, down the road. Are you delivering on your promise? And this is about, is the purpose and the program connected? Because what happens a lot of times for brands is you create this CSR vision. It's got programs that support it. And then, okay, that's what it is. And then a couple years from now, you look at it and you've added more programs to it. And suddenly, in some respects, you look at it and goes, well, why is this program here? Does it fit what we were really trying to do? And that mid-course reassessment of alignment is really, really important. So again, I like the term, does the purpose connect with the program? And the second piece is assessing and evaluating alignment. And this is alignment in two different perspectives. Is the CSR program aligned with your business? Likewise, is business aligned with CSR? And the second piece is alignment with your key constituents. What they expect of you changes over time, and your program needs to adapt. And the third thing deals with communications. Always looking at, am I being transparent? And how effective am I in delivering my message? Because what happens a lot of times is, different delivery mechanisms. Snapchat wasn't around a couple years ago. Well, how would we use Snapchat to effectively talk about CSR? What other things are coming down the road that give us the ability to communicate CSR? Your program needs to be able to incorporate change.
If you'd like to learn more about our corporate social responsibility strategy and our approach to working with companies to develop corporate social responsibility programs wherever they are on the continuum, we have a new information sheet that is available on our website. You can see what it looks like here, and there's also the URL for you to go to if you'd like to download it and learn more.
There we go. Thank you all for coming here today. Corporate social responsibility is not an old theme. However, I'm hoping that if we got through you today, was the fact that it's an ongoing story. And Mark, do you have any questions?
Great, thanks, guys. We got a few questions in the queue, and audience, if you have any other ones, you can add them to the portal now. First question is. We are a modest company, and we're concerned about bragging about what we do on CSR. Any advice?
Brag. Seriously. No, as I said before, CSR is a contract between you and your constituents. And your constituents want to know what you're doing to deliver back. Time and time again, you see these statistics that people expect the brands they do business with to be good corporate citizens. And moreover, they expect them to share the same values as they do. How are they going to know you're doing that unless you tell them?
Yeah, that's a good question, Mark, and it's one that we hear quite a bit from companies who say, our personality is to be kind of humble, and we like to do good, but we don't necessarily like to talk about it. And hopefully through some of the statistics and other information we showed you today, it's really important to your constituents. They want to know what you're doing. In many cases, one of the criteria that people might be looking at in deciding where they want to work or who they want to buy from or who they want to invest in is what are you doing from a corporate responsibility standpoint. So there's a way to do it that's effective and strategic without being self-serving.
And I'll tell you, this isn't quite what you asked, Mark, but another thing that came up, and this is a real client experience we had recently, where they were doing an RFP. They were submitting a response to an RFP, and there was a line in the RFP that said, what is your corporate social responsibility strategy? And you need to be prepared to say to someone, here's the paragraph on what we do and what we stand for, and here's a link to our corporate social responsibility page.
Great. Second question. We already have a CSR program in place. How can we reinvigorate it?
Well, I think the how do you reinvigorate it is talk to your constituents. And I wouldn't necessarily suggest that it needs to be reinvigorated. I think if you're asking that question, that means that you haven't engaged your constituents with that kind of temperature check to make sure there's still that alignment. And I'd want to talk to your customers, your employees, your other important constituents to make sure there's that connection. And you may find that your program's working, or you may find that it's not.
Like Chuck mentioned earlier in the presentation, it is important to take that temperature check and to make sure that you're remaining current. The foundational pillars of your program likely aren't going to change, but the activities within those foundational pillars might need to shift a little bit based on the priorities and what's important to your customers, to your employees, to all of your stakeholders, because for any number of reasons, those kinds of things are going to shift over time, and it is important to have a mechanism in place to get that ongoing feedback to make sure that you're remaining current and in lockstep. It really goes back to the point that we made earlier about the importance of alignment with your corporate social responsibility program and your business's mission, vision, and values, and those of your customers.
Great. And it looks like we have one more question. You mentioned employees. How do we tie our CSR program to recruitment?
Well, it should be something that is certainly highlighted on your website. It's a great program to talk about with prospective employees because, again, there's a lot of data that shows they want to know the type of company that they're going to work for. Are the values that they have as individuals aligned with the values of the company that they're going to work for? So making it part of the recruiting process, something that's talked about, something that's made available through the website or through other means is really important. And then certainly, ongoing engagement with employees. A lot of the examples that we gave today showed the role that employees play in bringing the corporate social responsibility programs and activities to life. So there's a real strong connection between employee engagement, employee satisfaction, morale, and corporate social responsibility.
Well, yeah, I think it's interesting. Companies have always wanted to talk about what, we do the blood drive, we do the United Way campaign, we walk in the Heart Walk. And they've always done a nice job talking about those. But I don't think there's ever been any strategic mission behind it, if you will. And what we're finding now is this is a real recruiting issue. And you can't just hide behind the seal of we're a great place to work. Because I don't think that there needs to be more depth to the statement that we're a good place to work. You need to have a very robust content area on your website that makes employees feel like, oh, this is where I want to work. It can't just be a bunch of stamps, great place to work, to this, to that, to this. I don't think those things mean as much to today's workforce. I mean, they're important, but I think why you get them is more important. Yeah.
Okay, well, I spoke too soon. There's another question. So, and the question is, one area of advertising that still has plenty of gray area with transparency is native advertising and branded content. How do you see CSR fitting into the native advertising landscape to keep consumer trust and transparency?
Well, I can tell you that I don't mind reading about campaigns companies are doing. Yeah, I think it has to do with. I'll go back to where we started. Is what's your message? Is it aligned with your constituents? Is it genuine? Is it authentic? And I think if your message is authentic, and it's delivering a value proposition to your constituents, I don't think it's inappropriate to be buying a Facebook ad, having a video, a boosted post or whatever. I think promoting the fact that you're a good corporate citizen isn't a bad thing. It's all about context.
Yeah, I think if it meets the criteria of alignment and transparency that we talked about earlier, it's...
How is that different than Coca-Cola spending $500,000 on a media buy during March Madness to talk about how they care about water? I don't know. To me, there isn't a difference.
Good question.
I think you should.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks, guys. And thanks, everyone, for joining us today. We'll post this webinar to our website, which is www.mower.com, and we'll share a link to it shortly. Chuck and Brad, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Just that, in going back to where we started, in the world in which we live in, there is the expectation among all of your stakeholders that a company is behaving responsible and has a strong corporate social responsibility program, and that they want to know about it. They want that transparency, and they want to know that the company that they're looking to do business with, that they're looking to work for, that they're looking to invest in, aligns with the values and what's important to them. Corporate social responsibility is the way to do that. Chuck?
I couldn't say it any better. Thanks for everybody for joining us today.
Thank you.